Everything's kind of addressed here.
Okay, thank you. All right, welcome to the meeting this month for the Orange County Economic Development and Gaming Committee. Before we start, I'd like everyone to stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Under God, indivisible.
justice.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, can we do a roll call? Anna?
Yes,
Here.
Luhan?
Present.
Menuda?
Here.
O'Donnell?
Here.
Sierra? Stiganga?
Here.
6 present. 1 absent.
Okay, so to start off the committee, I'm not sure if we need a first or a second, but a discussion. I know that when we left off last year on this committee meeting, we had appointed Ben Oster for our commission, for the gaming commission, and due to the pandemic and some other things that were going on, they didn't have any meetings. So I don't know if you want to discuss a little bit what we were looking to do at that point before we move to the second order of business. Has everybody read the report that we finally got after? Yes, no? Did you get this?
Kathy, right here, if you want, I mean, I can brief people on it if they want. If they're
Well, that
not
would
aware.
be- Michael, could you do that? Because I know that you were really a big help with this in the beginning.
No, I think we all, I mean, especially Kevin Hines and I have talked over the years with what we thought was probably a quite rather ineffective leadership of the Catskill OTB, predominantly measured by the lack of revenues that Orange County got as other counties. And we kept just accepting it, although being frustrated and listening to Mr. Groth's explanation or excuses for it, until the Times Union newspaper released a major story that published the Inspector General's report and the Comptroller's report on the mismanagement in the Catskill OTB. What made that important was that was done in 2018, and the governor's office had not released it to the public. The Times Herald, the Times Union, I should say, got it and put it immediately in 22, released it in the form of an article. When we read that, we said, "Oh gosh, this is something that has to be handled." And Katie Benelli immediately jumped on that and said, "Based on our previous experience, we have to call for the resignation of Mr. Donald Groth as the executive director of Catskill OTB, based on that report alone." Senator Skoufis joined with that and took pieces of legislation to the Senate, asking that they also remove every one of the board members. At this point, that's where we stand. We're waiting to see if the government's going to do any more about that. But it's pretty clear if mismanagement was there. Things that are horrific. If you hadn't, right? I don't want to bore you. Tell me if you've seen it. But things like, using the OTB car as his personal car. Mr. Groth used it as personal car for years and just said he that's what he was doing. He had a relationship, romantic relationship. It was put in the report with one of his employees. And he was double dipping. He had retired and he had now was getting paid again the same salary by the OTB. When they went to the office, when the Inspector General went to the office, they couldn't get in it. It was just packed with rubbish and boxes and non-functional, to the point where every time they wanted to have a board meeting, they had to rent a conference room to have it. And then they found 3 or 4 warehouses with broken, decrepit equipment that probably should have been thrown out, that they were paying thousands and thousands of dollars to rent for no apparent reason. It all summed up to, just total mismanagement, and something needed to be done. And I think our Chairman Benelli did the right thing by saying we need to move this person on and get somebody in there who is ready to help return this to at least some level of profit for us. historically, when I first came in the legislature and we had the OTB committee, we were getting about $1.5 million a year from OTB. And as it kept going down to the point where there was, $100,000, and I think the last we heard was 150,000. And it was 2 years in the middle, it was zero. So it really indicates that there's a lot of mismanagement. We don't think there's been a board meeting in a number of years. We don't really know that. It's hard to get all the information from them. So I think the decision is, can we put a member that really will represent our interests on that board, who will go ahead and try to help us get our due share, our fair share. And if in so doing, the board decides that they would like to relieve Mr. Groth of his duties, that's their choice. Although pending, we believe that if Senator Skoufis and Senator Martucci's actions are correct, the Gaming Commission has every right to step in and take over the fiscal and managerial operations of OTB. Whether or not they'll do that or not is yet to be seen. But our first move is to make sure we have a good representative on the board. I think that's about brings it up to speed if that helps.
Correct, and I believe that's what we set out to do last year when we put Ben on the, as the commission, but they didn't have any meetings, so even though we appointed him, he was never actually recognized by the commission. So they haven't had a meeting that we know of for at least the last year since we appointed Ben. I'll make sure that everyone gets a copy of this so that you have it, because it goes into a lot more. There's no contracts, there's nothing, that there was no accountability as far as what was going on. Most of the buildings that were supposedly being paid for by the OTB didn't exist. So it's really a scathing report that came out, and we're gonna hopefully let our New York State and our senators actually push this forward and deal with it appropriately and hopefully quickly as far as that. So the second topic is
Chairman.
yes, I'm sorry.
What does that mean?
What do you mean? What does that mean?
What you just said, let the state and.
Well, we've written a letter, so we do have
You have a
where.
copy of that letter?
I have a copy of that as well. That didn't go out to everyone, Ken? I thought the letter went out to everybody. Yeah, so the legislative chairs from, I think it's like 8 different counties, all because there's 10 counties in the Catskill. Right, so there were 8 of them that actually got together and they agreed to sign and write a letter to the assembly and the senators, basically asking them to look into this and to take steps to take over the actual Catskill. They're looking to disband everybody who has been on that commission at this point and basically start from new, with each of us appointing new people to the board that we feel would be able to either look at restructuring it and doing it the right way or disbanding it completely. I know that we had talked about disbanding it completely. That was our original discussion, was that we didn't want to be part of the Catskill anymore because of the way it had transpired over the years and that we weren't getting anything out of it. Go ahead, Kevin. I know you had some comments on
Well,
that.
just that when we had 2 years of no revenue, Mr. Groth did come to us and he didn't have a plan to fix it. We said, how come Albany's doing well and you're not? Well, they have opportunities we don't have. Some people have video lottery terminals, we don't. And he basically said, we can't survive without video lottery terminals. And that's not true, because other OTBs were thriving at that
You
time.
said that for a few years.
And then we asked him about the capital fund. He got permission from then Governor Cuomo apparently to raid the capital fund.
Correct. He was allowed to take $2.5 million
And we
out
asked
per
him
year
not
for
to do that, but
salaries
he
and-
said he had no choice because he had limited payroll he had to make. And that's when we talk about, well, maybe it'd be better if we just disband and split up the 12 million at the time. Now I don't even think there's even 9 million there in the capital fund, because we were getting nothing and he was just gonna drain it down to nothing. I just think there's no, whoever they hire, who gets to hire, Michael? Is it the board members or is it the state?
I believe it's a board because
Yeah.
it's a separate organization.
Hopefully the board hires someone, like the person that runs Albany is a person that's up on technology and really new ideas and innovation. And I just don't think Mr. Groth was there amongst other shortcomings he had. So I know that there's a proposal to put somebody on the board. I don't see that person's in the room, and I'm a little disturbed by that because I want that person to if we appoint them, to leave here knowing what we want. What we want is change, a new person in charge that has qualifications, not only about horse racing, but technology, computers, how to, marketing, really a well-rounded individual as opposed to someone who just is a horse racing person,
And
which I think
actually-
Mr. Groth was.
Well, so that we can actually explain what our,
Yeah.
idea of putting him on and what we're looking to accomplish to represent
And I
us
think that our
in Orange County.
designees should tell us if they're not seated. I think I heard a rumor that the Dutchess County designee was designated a year ago, was never seated.
Correct.
Our individual was designated, I think, 5-6 months ago, was never seated. We should hear about that. They should say, hey, we never have a meeting. Like, that person should have communication with you and or Katie to say, this is what I did at the meeting, this is what I know. We should even get minutes. I don't know if there's minutes of these
There
meetings.
hasn't been.
If they don't have meetings, there's no
there's been
minutes, but
no
we
minutes.
should get those minutes, so that we know what the thought process is there.
Correct.
All right, so just in Michael's presentation, there's at least 2 crimes that jump out. And what your comments are about double dipping his pension and collecting a salary, and then paying rent for non-existent buildings or
A
where.
lot of co-mingling with the.
What owes someone more money? That's what I want to know.
I'm gonna allow Langdon to take over for that one. Betsy was gonna be here as well. She's been looking into it as well, but Betsy was unable to attend, so.
So I think by way of background, for those of you who don't know, I was counsel of the Senate Racing, Gaming, and Wagering Committee for a number of years, so I've got a background of racing law prior to becoming the county attorney. Well,
We'll put you on the board.
I can do Facebook. And I don't tweet and I don't Instagram, but I can do Facebook. And that's about it. So I think the bottom line is you're gonna have to get a board member in there to go start to ask the tough questions. And we saw what the Inspector General alleged, and that there's these warehouses that are filled with old computers and junk that haven't been used. And we need to get a board member in there who will go out there and start asking the tough questions of what's true, what's false, and be able to issue a real report to this legislative body. And not only our board member, but other counties. So at Chairwoman Benelli's direction, at Chairwoman Senega's direction, we've talked to multiple other counties in the Hudson Valley. There's 10 counties in the Catskill region, 6 of them are here in the Hudson Valley area, 4 of them are upstate. And there's a consensus, it seems, that by multiple counties that they want to have some change there. I think the question of what crimes occurred, if anything, is a little bit too early to say. But once we start to ask the tough questions and get the board in there to see whether this Inspector General's report is real or not real, and I have every reason to believe it is real. Well, no, honestly, and the chairwoman just said to me before privately, this strikes me as our 3 favorite letters. Mr. O'Donnell's and my 3 favorite letters, round 2, just on a larger scale.
Yes.
And that's IDA.
Yes.
And so that's where we go with this thing. The board hasn't met, to our knowledge, we haven't met. I'm familiar with Mr. Groth. I've met with him many times in my prior capacities. And they just have not kept up with the times. Capital OTB's got some advantages that we don't have. They have Saratoga. Saratoga and the Capital Region are a racing community. I mean, it's a racing town up there. But nonetheless, John Signor, who runs Capital OTB, has done a phenomenal job. You could go out and, you could take your spouse or significant other to a date to their teletheater. It's a nice type of thing. You wouldn't feel unclean. You enjoy yourself. You have a great time. The food's good. Video screens are huge, and it's an enjoyable experience. We have none of that behavior here in the Catskill OTB region. Our facilities remain shuttered for no good reason whatsoever. Around the state, they've reopened these OTBs, and we haven't been able to do that for some reason. So I think all those changes combined is what sparked this legislature to first call for these changes. Mr. Oster doesn't want to continue on. So, I mean, I in consultation with Chairwoman Benelli and Legislator Amo, some of the folks who have been spearheading this legislative Senega reached out to different attorneys. My sense was you wanted an attorney to serve on this board. I'm not going to tell you it was super easy, because when I called some of my fellow attorneys and said, hey, there's this giant facility across 10 counties that hasn't done much in multiple years, and they seem to be draining the resources, and they're the subject of an Inspector General's report. How'd you like to be on their board of directors? It wasn't the most popular thing in the world that people were willing to sign up for. John Dupay is a very competent attorney from Warwick. He practices here in Goshen. He's with the Dupay and Monroe law firm. He's admitted to federal courts across Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey. He's a competent criminal attorney. He's a competent civil attorney. And so with the chair's permission, I reached out to different people and he'd agreed to serve. Honestly, Kevin, this is as much as I'd love to, this is a relatively short notice thing. I'm not going to sit here and say, John's agreed to do this for months and months. He's going to help us do kind of what we did at the IDA, right the ship of state. And however long he wants to stay after that is going to be up to him. I've committed that I will, as long as they're public meetings, even though I'm not the county attorney anymore, participate in whatever way I can. Because I've got some familiarity with successes and OTBs. I know the folks at Capital OTB quite well and can seek some guidance from them. I don't think it's appropriate for me as a county employee necessarily to sit in the board myself. So John will do, I can believe, a great job, and I'm willing to do whatever I can do to assist him in doing that job. And I will be whatever conduit this body wants me to be in helping to communicate on this.
Is he a horse racing guy?
He's not a horse racing guy, but he's familiar, and I'm not sure he necessarily want a person who goes and you know, plays the pony, so to speak, on the OTB board, but he's a.
What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it. Those are wonderful, terrific people, but they may have a slightly different agenda in terms of, you know, our job is to maximize revenues for the taxpayers. I think that's got to be job number one.
And I also think we want somebody who's gonna go in there with a complete view of everything, whereas if they were involved in it prior, they'd have a different outlook on the whole thing. Whereas coming in, not really having a lot of knowledge of it, and with the guidance of Langdon, that he'll be able to see things with clearer eyes, because he'll be looking for all the things rather than saying, oh, well, this is normal, it's the way it's always been done. You know, so it's easier not to have someone who may have been involved in any of that prior.
That's another question for Langdon. Now, it seems to me in reading the Inspector General's report, I agree with Mr. O'Donnell, there is some crimes. I don't think the double dipping is, because I think the state knew about it and gave them a waiver, but I think there are others. What district attorney's office should be looking at this, and who would have jurisdiction?
I think you got a couple of different elements of jurisdiction. The warehouses are in Rockland County, so I think the Rockland County DA certainly has some jurisdiction down there. And wherever their boards were meeting, my guess is the board met in Rockland, based on what I'm hearing. So I think that's probably jurisdiction number one, but you know, you may have the U.S. attorneys for the Southern District of New York may have some jurisdictional issues going on there too. And you may not have crimes. Look, at the end of the day, the IDA, as we all know, 3 of their people pled out to crimes, corrupting the government, C, corrupting the government, D, and something else that ended up being pled down to a misdemeanor. Nobody did any jail time to it, which speaks for itself in terms of how you get how hard it can be sometimes to get a criminal conviction on some of these things. This may just be sloppy management.
But who should look into that is my point.
I would
Should
think-
we write a letter to Dave Vogler and say, you know, get with your colleagues and figure out who
I
should
think
look into
you
this?
have 2 potential, 1, the Rockland County DA, and 2, the State Gaming Commission.
But should we write a letter to get them to look at it?
Great.
I mean, should
I
we
think it's a
send
great
the
idea.
Inspector General's report to say, hey, maybe the state police started it or
I think
whatever?
it's a great idea.
So, I mean, start the process. Someone's got to start the ball rolling to say, and a lot of investigations turn out that there's no crime, but somebody's going to start the ball rolling to
My
look.
point exactly.
And I agree with you, that was one of the things that Betsy was going, if she had been here, was, I had discussed with her, is although the Times Union has actually put it out there and it's staying out there because they keep bringing it up, it's still our responsibility and the responsibility of anybody in any one of these 10 counties to actually send that, the letters are all good, but if we don't ask for that investigation, at least collectively, it's not going to happen.
We would need a complaint at the Montana legislature.
Look, this committee directs a letter to be written, I'll prepare a letter, send it to you for your approval, and you can.
I'll make a motion.
Second, I think it has to go out of rules though, doesn't it? I don't know.
To me,
Listen,
rules,
the county attorney can do it too, because the county is an aggrieved party.
at the end of the day, from my perspective, if you're a committee, you're not a statutory committee, but you're a
Right.
committee. If
Yeah, we can do it.
you give a recommendation to send a letter to the Rockland County DA and the U.S. Attorney under the chairwoman's signature, I'll draft
So
it
the
for Betsy's
motions, the
consideration.
motion will be to send a letter to Rockland County and to
US
U.S.
Attorney.
Attorney's Office.
US attorneys.
Could we CC our district attorney as well?
I think it's a great idea.
All right, any discussion on that? Any other input? Good, Kevin.
My only thing was to say that if everyone's in agreement, maybe we don't just be the sponsors of it.
Is everybody
That way, if it's unanimous, it
okay with
shows,
being
Yeah.
sponsors?
because I mean, it also shows that we are all in agreement on this. And
All right, and on that note, then I'll call for a vote. Everybody,
Yeah, Madam Chairwoman, can I, just one comment. I think for the, Langdon, maybe that
See
Hoover
you.
would Hoover would have a, I go up to five, that better, Hoover may have a position. You kind of wonder if the management was that bad in Rockland. What is it like at the restaurants, Delancey's and other places in the county, in our county, where what was going on, who knows? He certainly wasn't keeping an eye on a lot of things. I don't know if there's any angle there to work with or not, but so probably a lot of revenue passed through either all those restaurants.
right, we had a couple restaurants that had the horse racing in Greenwood Lake and at the Lansing as well, correct?
Yeah. And the other thing I think that Langdon, you mentioned is that I think with the board appointment, if we can get to a majority of the board of supporting this idea, I think that would provide a lot of pressure on Mr. Groff to straighten up or leave. If his majority of his board was calling for his resignation.
Okay, Mr. O'Donnell.
Listen, before we start naming restaurants, especially in my district, we have, not funny, we have no evidence of anybody doing anything illegal. I ain't seen.
Right, you're right, Jimmy. Jimmy, you're right. I didn't mean it that way. I was talking, he's not overseeing things. You're right.
There's no evidence of any restaurant doing anything illegal. Just make sure everybody understands that.
Well, I didn't take that was what was being said. It was more that the.
It could be
That's
said.
your opinion,
Oh, okay.
Jackie. I'm talking for everybody else that's
Okay.
listening,
Oh,
or
okay.
it's on the record now. One particular restaurant was named a couple of times, and there's no evidence of any wrongdoing on any restaurant's part. Okay? It's just speculation.
Okay.
Which should be stricken from the record if that's applicable here,
I
but
think you can stricken
Yeah, I
anyway.
don't think you can
anyway,
straighten it.
okay, so,
It was an illustrative point that was misinterpreted, I think,
Understood.
but I understand why the concern is very much there, and I think it's appropriate to correct that there's no problems that whatsoever that we have anywhere, so.
correct. So this has been going on for years. Mr. Groff does, he was before our board, how many times? It was always the same story, at $12 million and everything was continually just petering out of it. I don't know that this individual has any reason to do anything. We have, what's going to motivate at this point is really the question, because he's been before us how many times, and there's been no motivation for him to do anything different. So I don't know what the answer is to that. Hopefully this investigation will start moving that.
I think it's more that one of the suggestions was, if the different counties are now, if we can get new board members on there and actually get them where we appoint them, but they also get recognized by the commission. So they actually become board members on the commission, that they would be able to, as Brandon said, either put some pressure on to get it going correctly or to, what did you say? To,
I look at this as an opportunity just to refocus the board and do good things.
So we need a taskmaster to follow through on this. I mean, we only meet quarterly, if we do that at all. So somebody needs to be on point so that this continues forward. I mean, we have somebody who was appointed, wasn't even recognized. So
Correct.
these things are,
And we still don't know when they had their last meeting. So, when we did that, we assumed that he would be at the next meeting, but they didn't have a meeting and we don't know if they had a meeting even prior to that. Majority Leader, Tom, as you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank Mr. Amo and I want to thank Mr. Chapman for their background and research on this. One thing I'll just offer to this committee is an opportunity. whatever the investigations, and I've read those reports, they're shocking, they're alarming, they're disgusting. And also the reports from the newspaper. This committee here has an opportunity to show some great leadership in the 10-county region. Chairwoman Benelli and I have spoken about this incident, or the background of all of this here. She led the charge in the 10-county region to put together a conversation of other county leaders to talk about this issue. Orange County has been the #1 county in terms of being on top of this recently. And it's your opportunity here. And with Mr. Dupay, if you would take the consideration today and nominate him to be the board member, I'm confident that through Mr. Amo, Mr. Chapman, and this committee here, Mr. Dupay will take a lead. And I'm not saying that that Ben was not in a leadership position last year, but there were circumstances obviously beyond his control.
Correct.
But I think it's an opportunity for this committee here really to show some great leadership. And I will work with you guys in any way possible. But I would offer that it's a great opportunity to nominate this gentleman, let him then rally the other 10 counties and put together a strong, hey, listen, we're going to call the board of directors together, find out who these other people are, and he can be the catalyst that we can have here that can really make a change there and get, and then if Mr. Groff has got to go, our guy will be the guy to spearhead the way to make that happen, so.
Right, and I agree
And I
with that.
understand, and Mr. Chapman laid it out very well, that the obligations and responsibilities of being on that board, there were some circumstances, and the timeliness of the gentleman's name being brought forward, the circumstances are what they are, but from his resume, he seems like a very competent and intelligent guy, and I would hope that you would see through that you would nominate him today to be our board member. So thank you, Madam Chair.
He's on the agenda, isn't he?
He's not, his name's not on the agenda per se. The appointment, Orange County appointment to the board of directors.
Is on the
is
It's on the
agenda.
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 Yeah, and I got his resume. Bill got his resume.
And everybody, the resume was sent out to everybody, all the legislators.
Right. So I'll make a motion to move
Second.
Mr. DeVay, John C. DeVay Jr. as a board member.
Okay, prior to that, we still need to vote on the other one because Michael had asked a question. So we didn't vote on have a letter sent out to Rockland and the US attorneys and CC to Dave
So we
Fuller.
did.
We all
Yeah,
sponsored it.
we all sponsored it, but I started to vote on it and Michael
It
had
was
a
O'Donnell
comment,
and
so.
Menuda
Aye.
seconded.
Am I correct on that? Kelly, that we didn't-
O'Donnell started it, Menuda seconded, and then we all said that we were, but you're right, we had to
Right,
vote.
we all wanted to sponsor, but Michael, before we could vote on it, so I just
Right.
want to do the vote on that first and then we'll. So all in favor?
All right,
I,
Any against? Okay, now, Legislator O'Donnell, you can redo that motion for appointing.
Make a motion to nominate John C. DeVay Jr., attorney from Goshen area. I think he lives in Warwick. Is that what you said? And nominate him to the board to represent us.
I'll second it, and, but again, Madam Chair, if we can perhaps have the entire committee to do that,
all sponsor.
all sponsor. This
Is
is, again,
everybody
shy of some
okay
good.
with that?
So.
Let's,
Madam Chair, just as a reminder that if this does pass today, this will be on the agenda for rules
for
tomorrow.
rules tomorrow,
Okay,
correct?
so thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Madam Chair, a
Yes,
comment here to go with Mr. Hines' point. I think probably within a week, after a few days after the rules makes the appointment, we could actually have a Zoom, a Teams meeting with him and have him participate with us and let us put on the table what we want him to do. I don't think we need to wait for a separate meeting. We got the ability to do it quickly.
no, I agree with that. I mean, because we don't know when they're going to meet, so I really believe that if, the appointment goes through and everybody is in agreement and that the first order of business is for us to sit down with him so that he has an understanding of what we're looking for, the direction for him to move and, have that conversation. So
Well, he
thank
won't
you.
be appointed till after the legislative meeting.
Right, it wouldn't
officially.
be until after the June meeting,
Yeah.
but if we.
I mean, Kevin, it could be earlier because it may influence your vote.
My bad. So is that something that's possible?
I think it's
I would
possible, whether it'll be before or after, we'll check with them. I mean,
Okay.
the reality is, and Mr. Menuda, to your point, Mr. Dupay is a human, he is a resource to the county and as Commissioner of Human Resources, I'm gonna spend my time with him trying to do the right thing on this board. This is I look at this as just another opportunity to do good things for the county, just like the IDA. So I'm committed personally to helping wherever I can to make sure we have an effective OTP representative.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Can we just at least request that he come for the rules meeting then?
I don't know if he can come as soon as tomorrow, honestly.
Sure.
Candidly, it was, he was generous in agreeing to serve.
Understood.
And look, it's an honor, but at the end of the day, I've outlined the posture of what we're asking him to do.
Absolutely. That's fine. I just want
And
to.
I promised him that I will do whatever I can do to assist in making sure that.
That's fine.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Everybody is, we're all gonna sponsor that, so all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, and the third item on the agenda was discussion, but the discussion that was going to be there, I think we've already had. I kind of had left that open so that we could go over the things that we talked about before we even got into the appointment. Yes, Kevin?
Do we have any idea what we're getting from the casinos? I know we're off topic, this is OTB, but this committee
I have-
is supposed to monitor that.
I
as
have
well.
tried to reach out to Megan Taylor, because I was really in now, and I actually have a phone call into the Newburgh area as well, because I know that was supposed to be done in April, the casinos over
Neighbor Mall.
in Newburgh, in the Newburgh Mall. And I know they're behind at this point.
Mhm.
I have not been successful in reaching out to Megan at this point. I keep leaving phone messages at the 800 number for, I haven't had that. The chairwoman was going to reach out. I guess she has a personal relationship with a family member to see if we could get involved with her too. Because I'd really like to bring her before so that we can get a full understanding of not only the Catskill, or not the Catskill, the one up in Monticello, but also the new one that's going to be coming up, because we're supposed to be getting money from that as well.
I spoke to the contractor, he said it should be open in November,
Right.
to Newburgh Mall.
Right, the original
But
time.
we also should be getting quarterly checks from the casino, so
Correct.
maybe if the budget department can get us that, or whoever's.
Yes,
talking,
I'll
finance
talk to
department.
Karen and I'll talk to Debbie on that.
And I'm just curious as to when we did hear something from Catskills. I mean, the last time I recall anything, when they did send a representative, they sent Josh Somers.
Right,
I don't know-
Josh
I don't know
was
if there's been
replaced-
anything
Josh
since
was
then.
replaced 2 years ago.
Right, so that's
And-
my
right.
last recollection.
And the last meeting we had, we were dealing basically with this whole topic when we had put Mr. Oster in.
So we have not had a report
We
from them
have not
since?
had a report. Karen was here at that meeting and she did give us the update on, for that year up to that point. But we did not get an update for this year.
Thank you.
And that will be on the next meeting. It was just that we wanted to deal with the appointment and get that going, and also discussion for where the Catskill is right now and the report that was sent out. This one I found a little bit discouraging because it was done in 2017. And for it not to be released is kind of, I mean, I guess I should say I shouldn't be surprised by New York State. But that really should have been disclosed, especially to the counties that were involved in this and actually had a stake in it.
That's before.
So
the
it was
three of us were
before
even
us.
here.
Exactly, it was before we were even here. So for, this is now going on 5 years and we're just getting wind of it because of the Times Union. Legislator O'Donnell.
Yes, they're legally required to submit reports to us, so you can be sure
Check.
we have them.
Yeah,
They're in
I mean-
budget, all we gotta do is call budget tomorrow.
I just emailed them and asked them to email you back.
okay.
Just the other thing is now that they're doing the sports betting there too, we're supposed to see additional revenue out of that.
Correct. Now, the online, and I didn't do a lot of research on that. I know that the online is now up and running. I'm not a gambler, so I don't really know a lot about it. I know with the sports betting and stuff, those phones are going crazy watching games and being able to bet, second by second and stuff. So I'm not really sure. I'd like to find out, and I'm gonna do a little research on that, on how they actually track that. If you have to, and maybe, Michael, do you know anything about the online sports betting? If you have to register, you have a.
You have to register.
I don't bet sports, but I'm just looking up something. I know the mobile sports betting is out and running and it's connected to the 4 casinos. That makes it legal. I just read a piece from the Gaming Commission, without reading the whole, New York mobile sports betting handle just exceeded $5 billion.
Massive.
Okay, yeah, it's massive.
It's off the charts.
And more people are doing it, like particularly right now for the last 2 years. It's pretty thick.
Let me see if I think they break it down by casino. I just saw the article.
Hey, you know, someone personally that sits there like this and is on, and I don't get it, but.
It seems like I know someone who was like their part-time job is basketball and that's all they do. It's pretty crazy.
I think it gives a new meaning to the, what was it, the sports football, or what is the?
To be sure the state is on top of how much they're supposed to get. 62 counties, I don't think they're on top of how much they're supposed to get from state. So that's the issue.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the concerns that I've also had about, doing the mobile version. I mean, it's great, wonderful, but I mean, are we benefiting?
Most of this, most of the tax revenue that comes to the state is allegedly earmarked for education.
Allegedly.
I love the alleged.
And I said, because people say the lotteries, people will say the lottery is supposed to go to education. It's not. Other people will tell you, well, no, when the lottery started coming in, we would increase our overall revenue to education, so it did. It's just how you argue the case, but.
If it was allocated education, our school taxes wouldn't be what they are.
They took the money that was in
It's all
education,
general fund.
They put it in general.
replaced it with the lotto money.
Kathy, can I question, Langdon may know this one because you were involved in. They're now talking about the 3 new casinos downstate. How close is Rockland in the southern part of Orange to that, or are we out of it?
I don't know, actually.
Because I'm just wondering if we're gonna get an onslaught like we did last time, because I know Westchester's in for sure, because that's one of the main ones that they're talking about, the Yonkers Raceway.
I'd be shocked.
I thought there were 2 in New York City too.
I mean, to me, they've invested so much up in Sullivan, I couldn't believe the state would put one here, because
Not
that was
either.
already hurting, so it's in terms of what it's
Yeah.
expected.
Yeah, then that one would not succeed at all because
It's gonna
everybody
tie
would
if
stop
they go to New
here.
York City.
Oh, they're gonna kill. That's
They're
good.
done.
Because here, on this article, they say that it is somewhere in New York City, 5 boroughs, Long Island, or the lower Hudson Valley. But they don't say what that is. And that's
Westchester.
probably Westchester.
In that area. Okay, so if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to end the meeting.
Motion
Oh.
to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, thank you so much, and I will look into getting all that for